Floyd Mayweather has decided to retire from boxing. Again? But this time it seems certain. The 44-year-old unbeaten champion has announced that he would not be fighting anyone again, instead focusing on other business ventures that will help set up his children for life. Additionally, we'll also touch on some other times boxers have spoken badly or poorly about the sport. Stick around for all the juicy inside details. First, why Floyd Mayweather Jr. will never return to the sport of boxing ever again. It's sad, but we think it might be fully true. Floyd Money Mayweather seriously doesn't want to return to boxing and wants to retire completely from the sport entirely, including potentially no more exhibition matches. Following his exhibition bout with Logan Paul earlier this year, Floyd Mayweather Jr. cast no doubt on his future in the ring. Mayweather stated he would absolutely not agree to another official boxing battle. He noted that an exhibition comparable to the Paul encounter is probably not in the cards. The latter remark is startling, given that all signals pointed to meeting with Jake Paul. The 24-year-old is pushing his way up the combat sports ladder, coming out victorious over UFC welterweight champion Tyron Woodley just this past August. With their meeting during a press event in May, Mayweather and Jake Paul seemed to sow the seeds for something bigger down the line. Mayweather also told TMZ Sports earlier this year that his next bout would be with probably Jake, following the Logan Paul fight. Money always speaks for itself, especially when Floyd's iconic nickname is Money. When Mayweather knocked out Conor McGregor in August 2017, few could have anticipated he'd be back in the ring nearly 4 years later with the renowned YouTuber. If the 44-year-old believes he can get another big payday for little effort in the future, it may be too good to pass up. Floyd discussed everything boxing with Fight Hub TV just this past November. The conversation spanned from the Canelo vs. Pacquiao match to speculations of another exhibition fight. When the interview asked Money Mayweather if he planned to return to boxing, the champ responded quickly, "No way, no how, no way, I'm not going back to boxing," Floyd remarked. The legendary boxer stated, "The sport of boxing was good to me. I was able to make a lot of smart investments on the outside, and I just want to help. Like I said, the fighters that's up and coming." Fighters like Gervonta Tank Davis and Rolando Romero have signed with Floyd's boxing marketing firm, so Floyd's current concentration is on assisting Tank in his profession. Floyd last fought on June 6 at the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida earlier this year. In an 8-round exhibition bout, he stepped out of retirement to challenge YouTuber turned boxer Logan the Maverick Paul. Floyd definitely outboxed a taller and stronger YouTuber, despite the fact that the fight was declared a draw. Obviously, this is bittersweet news for everyone involved, both Floyd and his fans. It would be awesome to see Floyd Money Mayweather back in the ring again, but it's understandable that he's ready to walk away. Now let's take a look at the biggest boxing scandals ever. Boxing, perhaps more than any other sport in history, has its fair share of controversy and scandal. Boxing's not a sport for the faint of heart. The majority of boxing's biggest scandals are the result of someone attempting to gain an advantage by unethical means, whether in the ring, in the rankings, or in the cash flow. First up, Robert Lee scandal. Robert Lee, the president and founder of the International Boxing Federation, IBF, would be found guilty on 6 counts of money laundering and tax evasion after a multi-year FBI investigation, but would manage to dodge the more serious charges of racketeering. Lee, according to the FBI, has a long history of bribes and extortion in connection with title shots and ranking. In the same case, promoter Bob Arum testified that he arranged for Lee to be paid $100,000 to approve a title defense for George Foreman against Alex Schultz rather than Foreman's #1 contender. Cedric Kushner and Dino Duva, both promoters, admitted that they paid bribes to have their fighters' rankings rigged. Lee was sentenced to 22 months in prison, fined $25,000, and barred from boxing for the rest of his life. Next, Antonio Margarito gets caught. When Antonio Margarito challenged Shane Mosley in January 2009, he had just come off an incredible 2008 TKO of previously undefeated Miguel Cotto, the former welterweight world champion. Nazim Richardson, Mosley's trainer, spotted a powdered material in Margarito's gloves. Margarito was forced to rewrap his gloves 3 times after this substance was brought to the attention of officials. Plaster of Paris, a powder that hardens when wet, was discovered to be the ingredient. Sweat would cause the powder to harden into the equivalent of a cast when applied on hand wraps. Mosley would go on to knock Margarito out in devastating fashion, resulting in a 1-year suspension from the sport. Following the discovery of Margarito's plaster, many have questioned his 2008 fight with Cotto, as well as some of his prior triumphs. And the sport of boxing has suffered yet another setback. Up next, we have Roy Jones Jr. and the stolen medal. Roy Jones Jr. was a shining amateur star on his way to a guaranteed gold medal at the 1988 Summer Olympics in Seoul, South Korea. Before becoming a 4-division world champion and pound-for-pound king, Jones lost a 3-2 decision to Park Si-hun of South Korea in a gold medal bout in which he landed 86 blows compared to Park C's 32. Huns, the International Olympic Committee, IOC, looked into the contentious judgment, and the 3 judges who voted against Jones were suspended. Prior to the match, South Korea officials had wined and dined the judges in question, according to the IOC. The ruling in the Roy Jones case resulted in a modification in the scoring method for Olympic and amateur boxing competitions. Now, Mike Tyson's insane bite. Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield in 1996 was the heavyweight equivalent of Mayweather versus Pacquiao today. Both combatants were plainly not the same as they were 5 years ago when the excitement was at its peak. Nonetheless, it was about to happen. It worked, as Holyfield won by TKO in round 11 to pull off a stunning shock. Many fans refused to accept the fact that Tyson was no longer the baddest man on the earth. Thus, the rematch was organized in 1997. Tyson was cut by a Holyfield headbutt during the second round of Tyson-Holyfield 2. During their fight, Tyson complained that the referee did nothing about Holyfield's headbutts. In round 3, Tyson took matters into his own hands and bit Holyfield on the right ear, tearing a piece of cartilage from his ear and spitting it out. Tyson bit the other ear and then came over to Holyfield's corner to protest and fight after referee Mills Lane deducted 2 points from him. The crowd was furious when Tyson was disqualified. Tyson's back was even thrown at by a supporter. Tyson faced a $3 million fine and a 1-year suspension from the sport. Boxing has suffered even more as a result of the pop culture fallout, with the sport becoming a circus spectacle worthy of the mid to late 1990s trash TV era. Jerry. Next is the Arturo Gotti murder mystery. Gotti, a former world champion and co-winner of 4 Ring Magazine Fights of the Year, was discovered hanging in his hotel room in Brazil in July 2009. With his only wife, Amanda, and their 10-month-old boy present, questions arose about how such a thing could have happened and why his wife stayed in the hotel room with the deceased Gotti for 10 hours before calling the cops. The death was first ruled a homicide, and Gotti's wife was jailed, but she was later released after it was discovered that the death was a suicide. Others are calling for the case to be reopened in order to learn the truth, citing Gotti's widow and their claimed marital troubles. Up next, Carlos Monzon becomes a murderer. Carlos Monzon is widely regarded as the greatest Argentine boxer of all time, as well as the best middleweight, 160 pounds, of all time. Monzon retired in 1977 and managed to stay out of the news. His previous violent relationships, which included getting shot in the leg by an ex-wife at least once, became the stuff of paparazzi legend. Monzon returned to the Main Street press in 1988. He not only beat his wife, Alicia Munoz, but he also grabbed her by the neck and tossed her from their apartment's second-floor balcony. Monzon was found guilty of homicide and was sentenced to 11 years in prison. Monzon was allowed to spend the whole weekend with his family in 1995, only to crash his car and die on the way back. And there you have it, everything you need to know about Floyd Money Mayweather Jr. and why he has claimed that he'll never return to boxing again. Additionally, we also touched on some of the craziest, most insane boxing scandals to take place ever, and some of those were definitely crazy. Make sure to let us know your thoughts down below on it all. But if you enjoyed today's video, also don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss any of our new and upcoming content. Thanks for watching.